If you like love stories with unexpected secrets and twists that leave you breathless, subscribe and join me every week. That winter night, as Claire closed the city's oldest library, she never imagined that the man she'd been helping for months was actually the millionaire who could save everything she loved with just a signature. But when she found out, his words cut through her like a knife. "I don't need your pity, Claire. I never did." Hello. Before continuing with this emotional story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love imagining what country or city you're joining me from today. Now, let's get back to this love story that's about to open many wounds, and perhaps even hearts. The Carnegie Library had been Claire's refuge since she was 12. She was a shy, lonely child when her parents died in a car accident, and she found those halls lined with ancient books, the one place where grief didn't follow her. Now, at 28, she was the head librarian, and every morning when she opened those carved oak doors, she felt like she was protecting something sacred. The 1903 building had breathtaking architecture, huge windows that let in the golden light of the sunset, marble staircases that whispered stories from over a century ago, and a glass dome that made the whole place feel like a cathedral of knowledge. For Claire, it wasn't just her job, it was her home. That October morning, while organizing the history books that always ended up in disarray, she overheard the conversation that made her blood run cold. "Ms. Hamilton, I regret to inform you that the city has made a final decision. The library will close in December." Claire dropped the books she was holding. The sound echoed throughout the room like a cry of pain. The headmistress, Margaret Hamilton, a 60-year-old woman who had dedicated her entire life to this place, had tears in her eyes as she spoke on the phone. "They understand that it's a historic building, but the maintenance costs are too high. The developer already has approved plans to build an office complex." Claire felt like the world was crumbling beneath her feet. Without thinking, she approached Mrs. Hamilton. "You can't do this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "This place is more than a library. It's the heart of the community." Margaret hung up the phone and looked at Claire with deep sadness. "I know, dear. Believe me, I know. But there's nothing we can do now. The numbers don't lie. We don't have the funds for the repairs the building needs, and the city can't keep subsidizing our deficit." That afternoon, Claire stood alone among the books, surrounded by the silence that would soon be eternal. She walked down every aisle, touched every shelf, breathed in the scent of old paper and polished wood that had been her refuge for so many years. She sat on the marble staircase and cried like she hadn't cried since she was a child. That's when he heard the voice. "Excuse me, it's open." Claire quickly wiped her tears and sat up. A tall man in his 30s was standing in the doorway. He was wearing a worn gray sweater, patched jeans, and a backpack that had seen better days. His brown hair was slightly disheveled, and he had a few days' growth of beard that gave him an unkempt but attractive air. "Yes, of course. Come in, please," Claire replied, trying to regain her composure. "Thank you. I'm William, but you can call me Will. I'm a graduate student in history. I was wondering if I could access your local historical archives section." Claire studied him for a moment. There was something in his blue eyes that conveyed a deep intelligence, but also a sadness she recognized, because she'd seen it in her own mirror for years. "Of course, the archives section is on the second floor. I'll accompany you." As they climbed the marble staircase, Will stopped to admire the architectural details. "This place is amazing," he murmured, running his hand along the carved railing. "The craftsmanship is exceptional. They must have built it during the golden age of Carnegie libraries." Claire was surprised by his knowledge. Exactly 1903. Andrew Carnegie funded the construction, along with 600 other libraries across the country. "Did you study architecture as well?" Will seemed to hesitate for a moment. "A little. I'm interested in the history of architectural preservation." Over the next few weeks, Will became a constant presence at the library. He arrived every afternoon, shortly before closing time, and stayed until Claire had to leave. He always worked in the archives section, but Claire noticed him helping other patrons, especially elderly people who had difficulty with stairs or couldn't reach books on high shelves. One rainy November afternoon, Claire found him helping Mrs. Peterson, an 80-year-old woman who came to read the newspapers every day. "Let me help you with that, Mrs. Peterson," Will said as he handed her a more comfortable chair. "You're an angel, William." My grandchildren never have time for this kind of thing. Claire watched from afar as Will sat with the elderly woman and helped her find the obituary section she was looking for. There was a patience in his gesture, a genuine kindness that touched her. When Mrs. Peterson left, Claire approached Will. "That was very kind," he told her. Will shrugged. "We all need help from time to time." Claire noticed something else about him. Despite his plain clothes and his appearance as a poor student, there were times when he demonstrated knowledge that went beyond textbooks. When the lock on the front door broke, Will repaired it with professional-looking tools. When the heating system failed, he knew exactly which valves to adjust. "Where did you learn to do that?" Claire asked him one afternoon as he fixed a window that wouldn't close properly. "My grandfather was very handy with his hands. He taught me many things when I was a child." There was something about the way Will talked about his past that always seemed vague, as if he was carefully editing each answer. One night in late November, Claire stayed up late working, organizing the final inventory before the final closure. The weight of reality crushed her day by day. In less than a month, all of this would be history. Will appeared in the doorway of his office with 2 cups of steaming coffee. "I thought you might need this," he said, offering her a cup. Claire accepted the coffee with pleasure. It was exactly how she liked it, with a hint of cinnamon. "How did you know I like it like that?" "I've seen you prepare it many times. I pay attention to the details." They sat in silence for a moment, surrounded by boxes and papers. Claire felt a connection with Will she couldn't explain. It was as if he understood her pain without words. "Can I ask you something personal?" Claire said finally. "Of course. Why do you always come so late?" "Most students prefer mornings." Will looked out the window into the darkness outside, because at night, this place feels more authentic. No crowds, no rush. That's when you can truly connect with the history these walls hold. Claire felt her heart race slightly. "I think exactly the same. When I was a kid, I used to hide here after closing time. The librarian at the time, Mrs. Morrison, let me stay. She said, some of us need more time with books than with people." Will looked at her with an intensity that made her blush. "Did you lose someone very young?" The question took her by surprise, but there was something about the way Will asked it that made her feel safe. "My parents, I was 12, a car accident. After that, books became my family." Will nodded in understanding. "I lost my sister 3 years ago, leukemia. She was only 3. 4 months, libraries were the only places I could find peace." Claire felt a lump form in her throat. "Very sorry. The toughest moments teach us to value the places that heal us, right?" That night, as they walked toward the exit together, Claire felt she'd found someone who truly understood her. Will walked her to her car, a small 2010 Honda Civic that had seen better days. "Do you live far away?" he asked. "About 20 blocks away." "And how are you leaving?" Will seemed to hesitate. It's not far." Claire noticed that he hadn't specified where he lived, but didn't want to press the issue. The next day, Claire arrived early and found something unexpected on her desk. A first edition of Louisa May Alcott's Little Women, her favorite book since childhood. A note was taped to it. "To someone who understands the power of stories that heal hearts." Claire took the book with trembling hands. It was a 1868 edition, perfectly preserved. It was worth a fortune. How could a penniless graduate student afford something like that? That afternoon, when Will arrived, Claire confronted him. "Will, this book must cost thousands of dollars. I can't accept it." Will got nervous. "I found it in a second-hand bookstore." The owner didn't know what he had. Claire stared at him. There was something about his explanation that didn't ring true. "Seriously? Which bookstore?" Will avoided her gaze. "A small one in the center. I don't remember the exact name." Claire decided not to press further, but something had changed. She began to look more closely at the details about Will that didn't fit. His shoes, though old, were of an expensive brand. His watch, discreet but clearly of quality. The way he spoke at times, with a vocabulary and mannerisms that didn't match his image as a poor student. One December afternoon, while Will was helping take down some shelves for the final inventory, Claire noticed something that stopped her in her tracks. On his wrist, he had a very distinctive scar. Shaped like the letter W, it was the exact same scar she'd seen in a photograph in the local newspaper a few months earlier. In an article about the city's richest heirs, the article featured William Sinclair, grandson of industrial magnate Robert Sinclair, who had inherited a fortune estimated at $200 million. In the photo, the 30-year-old businessman posed at the annual benefit for the Sinclair Foundation, an organization dedicated to the preservation of historical and cultural heritage. Claire felt the air escape from her lungs. Was it possible? Was Will really William Sinclair, one of the richest men in the city? That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She searched the internet for everything she could find about William Sinclair. The photos confirmed her suspicions. Despite the shorter hair and smarter clothes in the official photographs, it was definitely the same person. The same face, the same blue eyes, the same scar on his wrist. But what surprised her most was discovering the Sinclair Foundation's mission to preserve historic libraries at risk of demolition. William Sinclair had saved more than 20 libraries in the past 3 years, turning them into sustainable cultural centers. The next day, Claire confronted Will directly. "Who are you really?" Will looked at her confused. "What do you mean? No more lies, Will? Or should I say, William Sinclair?" Will's face fell. For a long moment, he remained silent, as if deciding what to say. "How did you know?" Claire showed him the newspaper photo on her phone. "The scar on your wrist. It's quite distinctive." Will sat heavily in one of the reading chairs. "Claire, I can explain." "I hope you can, because I feel completely deceived." "Was it all a lie? Your story about being a student? Your sister?" "The moments we shared, the sister was real," Will replied, his voice cracking. "Emma died 3 years ago, exactly like I told you. And after that, yes, I was completely lost." Claire felt anger and confusion battle in her chest. "But the rest, your identity, your financial situation, all of that was false." Will stood up and walked to the window. "It wasn't fake, Claire. It was oversimplified. When I inherited my grandfather's fortune, I also inherited a responsibility I didn't know how to handle. The Sinclair Foundation has saved libraries, it's true, but always from a distance. I'd never been inside one when it was in crisis. I'd never seen the real pain of the people who love them." He turned to look at her. "I came here to evaluate whether this library was worth saving. That was my original intention. But then I met you, and everything changed." Claire felt tears threatening to spill out. "Did you know me, or did you study me? Was I part of your evaluation?" "No," Will shouted, approaching her. "You are real, Claire. What I feel for you is the most real thing I've experienced in years. Yes, I came here with a purpose, but I stayed for you." Claire stepped back. "How can I believe you? You've been lying for months." "I didn't lie about what was important. I didn't lie about Emma, about my pain, about what this place means to me now. I didn't lie about how I feel about you." Claire wiped away the tears that had finally started to fall. "You know, the cruelest thing about all this, for weeks I've been worrying about how to tell you the library was closing, because I thought it would hurt you as much as it hurt me. But it turns out you have the power to save it, and you've been playing me. That is not true. No. So tell me, William, are you going to save the library?" Will was silent for a moment too long. "It's complicated, Claire. There are many factors to consider." Claire felt something break inside her. "Factors, of course. I'm a fool to think all this could matter to you as much as it does to me." Without another word, Claire grabbed her things and headed for the door. "Claire, wait. No, Will, I don't need your pity. I never did." That night, Claire cried herself to sleep. She felt betrayed, but more than that, she felt like a fool for falling for someone who had been acting like a fool for months. The next day, Will didn't show up at the library, nor the next. Claire told herself it was better this way. But every afternoon that passed without seeing him, she felt a void she couldn't fill. Mrs. Hamilton found her one afternoon organizing books with a sadness she could not hide. What happened to that young man who always came around? Will, right? Claire didn't look up from her books. He doesn't come anymore. He was a good boy, very attentive to you. Claire finally looked at her. "Ms. Hamilton, have you ever felt like you knew someone, but it turned out you didn't know anything about them?" Margaret sat next to her. "I was once engaged to a man who lied to me about being married. I fell in love with who I thought he was, not who he really was. How did you overcome that?" Margaret smiled sadly. "Never completely. But I've learned that sometimes people lie because they're afraid to show who they really are. I don't condone the lies, but I understand the fear." That night, as Claire was closing the library for the last time before the weekend, she found an envelope addressed to her on her desk. With trembling hands, she opened it. "Claire, I know I have no right to ask you to read this, but I need you to know the whole truth. My real name is William Robert St. Clair III. I inherited my grandfather's fortune when I was 25, along with the responsibility of running the St. Clair Foundation. For the first few years, I delegated all decisions to consultants and lawyers. I saved libraries and historic buildings, but I never visited them. They were just numbers and reports. When Emma died, I realized I'd been living a life completely disconnected from what truly mattered. I decided I wanted to personally evaluate the Foundation's projects and understand what they truly meant to the communities. I came to your library as William Sinclair, but after 5 minutes of talking to you, I knew that if you knew my real identity, you'd never see me as a normal person. You'd be nice because you needed my money, not because you wanted to know me. So I lied. And every day that passed, the lie grew bigger, but also harder to confess because I was falling in love with you. Everything I told you about Emma was true. Everything I told you about finding peace in libraries was true. My pain, my need for connection, my feelings for you, all of it was completely true. The only fake things were my last name and my bank account. I know I've lost your trust, and I understand if you can't forgive me. But there's something you need to know. I'm going to save the library. Not for you, even though I love you. Not for me, even though this place changed my life. I'm going to save it because it's the right thing to do, because Mrs. Peterson needs a place to read her newspapers, because children like you need a refuge, because there are stories within these walls that deserve to be preserved. Tomorrow morning, my attorney will meet with the city to make a purchase offer they can't refuse. The library will not only remain open, but will be fully restored and have guaranteed funding for the next 50 years. If you can ever forgive me, I'd love to explain to you in person how I plan to honor this place and its history. If not, I'll understand. But please accept the directorship I'm offering you. Not as a favor, but because there's no one in the world who loves this place more than you. With all my love and regret, William P.S. Little Women was Emma's. It was her favorite, just like yours. She would have wanted you to have it. Claire read the letter 3 times, crying more with each reading. She felt a mixture of relief, love, pain, and hope that she didn't know how to process. On Monday morning, the news spread like wildfire throughout the city. The Sinclair Foundation had purchased the Carnegie Library and announced a $3 million restoration project. There would be new community programs, updated technology, and guaranteed employment for all current staff. Claire found herself surrounded by journalists, excited co-workers, and community members congratulating her as if she had orchestrated the entire rescue. But all I wanted was to see Will. 3 days later, as Claire was organizing restoration plans in her office, she heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. Her heart raced. Will appeared in the doorway, but he looked different. He was wearing a smart suit, his hair perfectly combed, and he had a nervous expression I'd never seen on him before. Hola, Claren. Hola, William. They stared at each other for a moment that felt like an eternity. Can I come in? Claire nodded. Will sat in the chair in front of his desk, but kept his hands carefully in his lap. I read your letter, Claire said finally. And I'm grateful for what you did for the library, and I understand why you lied about your identity. Will relaxed slightly, but I don't know if I can trust you again. Every moment we shared, I wonder what was real and what was a performance. Will leaned forward. It was all real, Claire. My nervousness the first night we talked, the way I felt when you smiled at me, how proud I was when you let me help with something, the fear I had that you'd find out who I was because I thought you'd change with me. Do you know the saddest thing? Claire asked. That you're right. If I'd known who you were from the start, I probably would have been different with you. More cautious, more formal. Maybe we would never have really gotten to know each other. Exactly. And that terrified me, because from the first conversation we had, I knew you were special. Claire felt her resolve weakening. Will, I understand your reasons, but lies hurt. Even well-intentioned ones, I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you give me the chance. Claire stared at him. What does that mean exactly? Will stood up and walked over to the window overlooking the library garden. It means I want to start over with you, but this time with complete honesty. I want you to know William Sinclair. With all his privileges and responsibilities, I want you to see my world, to understand the pressures I handle, but also to see that deep down, I'm still the same person who fell in love with you between these books. He turned to her. And I want to know more about Claire Thompson. I want to know what makes you laugh, what scares you, what your dreams are beyond this library." Claire felt tears start to form again. What if it doesn't work? What if we discovered that what we felt was just an illusion based on artificial circumstances? Will walked towards her until he was a few steps away. Then, at least we'll know we were trying, honestly. But Claire, what I feel for you has nothing to do with this library or my money or any external circumstances. It has to do with the way you care for Mrs. Peterson, with the passion in your voice when you talk about books, with the kindness you show even when you're hurt. Claire stood up and walked towards him. "I need time, Will, to process all of this, to decide if I can trust again. I understand. Take all the time you need. But there's something I need to know now, that the William I knew, the one who stayed late helping me with inventory, the one who listened to my childhood stories, the one who brought me cinnamon-laced coffee, was that person real?" Will looked at her with an intensity that made her tremble. "That person was more real than I've been in years. With you, I was able to be who I truly am beneath all the expectations and responsibilities." Claire felt something loosen in her chest. "Then, maybe we have a chance." Over the next few weeks, Claire and William began what he jokingly called their second first meeting. William invited her into his real world, his home, which turned out to be a historic mansion he had personally restored. The Sinclair Foundation offices, where Claire saw firsthand all the projects they had saved, and the board meetings, where William passionately championed projects other members deemed emotionally unprofitable. Claire was surprised to discover that William was more shy and vulnerable in his real world than he was in the library. Among businessmen and lawyers, he seemed uncomfortable, as if he were playing a role that didn't suit him. One evening, after a particularly tense dinner with potential investors, William took her for a walk in the park near his house. "Is it always like this?" Claire asked. "The fact that those meetings, you seem so tense, so different from the Will I knew." William stopped under a streetlight. "It's part of the job. My grandfather was a born businessman. I'm not. I prefer books and real conversations to financial strategies and networking events. So why not delegate more? You could hire someone to handle the business side of things, so you can focus on what really matters to you." William looked at her in surprise. "You know what? That possibility never occurred to me." Claire smiled. "Sometimes we need an outsider to see the obvious solution." That comment marked a turning point in their relationship. William began seeking Claire's input on the foundation's decisions, and she brought a practical human perspective that had been lacking in business strategy. One January afternoon, as they worked together on plans to restore the library, Claire realized she'd stopped questioning the authenticity of William's feelings. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't noticing, the way he remembered small details from their conversations, the passion with which he spoke of preserving not just buildings, but the communities that inhabited them, all of it was genuine. The turning point came one February evening. Claire had been working late on a new adult literacy program when she found William sitting on the marble staircase in the very spot where they had first met. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Just remembering what the first time I saw you cry on these stairs. How I wanted to comfort you, but I didn't know if I had the right to." Claire sat next to him. "Why didn't you do it?" "Because I was already falling in love with you, and I knew I had secrets that could hurt you." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the echo of their own breathing in the great space. "Will," Claire said finally, "Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about what you told me about starting over with total honesty, and I think I'm ready." William turned to face her fully. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure I want to try. I'm sure what I feel for you is real, regardless of your last name or your bank account." "And what do you feel for me?" Claire took his hand. "Love, confusing, complicated, but real." William felt the air escape from his lungs. "I love you too, Claire. More than I thought possible." He leaned in to kiss her, and this time, Claire didn't pull away. The kiss was gentle at first, filled with months of unresolved tension, but then it deepened with a passion that had been suppressed for too long. When they separated, Claire rested her forehead against his. "Do you know what the most ironic thing about this whole situation is?" he asked. That I fell in love with the richest man in town while thinking he was the poorest?" William laughed softly. "And I fell in love with the richest woman in everything that really matters." The following months were a rebuilding process in every sense. The library flourished under Claire's direction and William's financial support. But, more importantly, their relationship grew stronger every day with every small bit of honesty, every shared vulnerability, every decision they made together. William kept his promise to involve Claire in all of the Foundation's major decisions. She became his primary advisor on preservation projects, traveling with him to other cities to assess failing libraries and cultural centers. Together, they developed a new rescue model that not only provided funding, but also strengthened local communities. One March afternoon, while overseeing the installation of new display cases for rare books, Claire found something unexpected among the belongings that had been stored during the renovation. It was a carved wooden box with the initials RS engraved on the lid. "Will, come see this," Claire shouted from the basement. William ran downstairs and froze when he saw the box. "It can't be," he muttered. "What is it?" "It's my grandfather's, Robert Sinclair." I recognized the box. He had it specially carved to hold important documents. They opened the box together and found a collection of letters, photographs, and documents that told a story neither of them knew. Robert Sinclair hadn't just funded the library's construction in 1903. He had maintained a secret correspondence with the librarians for decades, ensuring they always had the necessary resources. The letters revealed that Robert had lost his own wife in an accident when his son, William's father, was very young. In his grief, he had found refuge in libraries, just as Claire and William had. His philanthropy wasn't just corporate generosity, it was a way of healing and ensuring that others would find the same refuge he had. In his final letter, dated just weeks before his death, Robert wrote, "Libraries are not just buildings filled with books. They are sanctuaries for wounded souls, hope for hungry minds, and bridges between lonely hearts. Whoever inherits my fortune, I hope they understand that true value lies not in the numbers and bank accounts, but in the lives we touch and the stories we preserve." William read the letter with tears in his eyes. "I never knew this about him. My father never told me that Grandpa had lost my grandmother so young, or that he had found solace in places like this." Claire took his hand. "Your grandfather would have been proud of what you're doing, of what we're doing." That evening, as they walked through the renovated halls of the library, William stopped in front of a glass case where some of his grandfather's letters had been displayed. "Claire, there's something else I want to tell you." She turned to him. "What is it?" "Since I met you, everything in my life has made more sense. The work of the Foundation, the responsibility I inherited, even the pain of losing Emma. It's like all the pieces of my life finally fit together." "What are you talking about?" William knelt slowly, taking a small velvet box out of his pocket. "I mean, I want to spend the rest of my life building something beautiful with you. Not just saving libraries, but creating a love story worth preserving forever." He opened the box, revealing a vintage diamond engagement ring set in a white gold band, accompanied by small emeralds that sparkled like the tears of happiness that began to fall down Claire's cheeks. "Claire Thompson, will you marry me?" Claire covered her mouth with her hands, completely overwhelmed. "Will, it's beautiful, but ... but... don't you think it's a bit soon? What if we discover things about ourselves we don't like when we actually live together?" William stood up, holding the box open. "Claire, I've lived 30 years without really knowing who I was. With you, I discovered not only who I am, but who I want to be. We can take all the time you need to plan a wedding, but I don't want to go another day without knowing you're going to be my wife. What if I don't fit into your world? The gala events, the investors, the whole life that comes with your last name." "Are you kidding?" William replied with a smile. "You're the only person who's ever made sense of my world. Besides, we've already proven we're a great team. You make me a better entrepreneur, and I hope I make you feel valued and loved every day." Claire looked at the ring, then at William, then around the library they had saved together. "This place taught us a lot about second chances, didn't it? Is that a yes?" Claire smiled through her tears. "It's a resounding yes." William slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her with a passion that echoed throughout the sacred space around them. The wedding took place a year later in the library garden, surrounded by community members who had witnessed their love story blossom. Mrs. Peterson served as honorary matron of honor, and Margaret Hamilton officiated the ceremony as a retired justice of the peace. In her vows, Claire said, "William, you taught me that true love isn't about who we think we are, but who we become when we find the right person. You taught me that honesty hurts sometimes, but it builds something stronger than any lie. And you taught me that some places, like some people, are worth saving no matter the cost. William responded, Claire, you saved me from a life of empty privilege and showed me the true meaning of wealth. You taught me that vulnerability is strength, that community is sacred, and that the deepest love grows in the most unexpected places. I promise to honor not only your heart, but also your passion for preserving the things that matter. 5 years later, William and Claire had expanded their work far beyond libraries. The Sinclair Foundation had become a national model for community preservation, saving not only historic buildings but revitalizing entire neighborhoods. Claire now ran a network of 20 renovated libraries, each with unique programs designed for their specific communities. Her original library had become the training center for librarians from across the country. On their 5th wedding anniversary, as they walked down the same halls where they had first met, Claire said to William, "Do you know what the most beautiful thing about our history is? That began with a lie, but was built on truths. That began with secrets, but blossomed into total transparency." William hugged her between the shelves of books that had witnessed her transformation. "You know what I think? That the best love stories aren't the ones that start out perfect. They're the ones that survive imperfection and become stronger for it." Claire smiled. Like old books, they become more valuable with time, not in spite of their yellowed pages and worn edges, but precisely because of them. And so, in the library that had brought them together, surrounded by thousands of other people's stories, Claire and William continued writing their own. A story that had begun with a hidden identity, but had blossomed into the most authentic love either of them had ever known. Mrs. Peterson, now 85, still came every day to read her newspapers. She often told visitors, "This library doesn't just preserve books, it preserves miracles. I saw love born here, and I've seen it grow into something beautiful that inspires the entire community." New library employees often asked about the couple featured in the photographs in the building's official history. Margaret Hamilton, who had stayed on as an honorary advisor, always told the same story. "That's Claire and William. He saved her from losing what she loved most, and she saved him from losing himself. They showed us all that sometimes lies lead us to the deepest truths, and that real love can blossom even in the most complicated circumstances." And so, after everything she'd been through, Claire understood that true love doesn't always come when we look for it. And it doesn't always come packaged the way we expect. But it always comes when we're ready to receive it, even if it initially comes disguised as something completely different. If this emotional story touched you deeply, tell me in the comments. What country are you listening from? What part of this love story moved you the most? Do you believe we all deserve a second chance at love, even after the lies? Like, if you think Claire made the right decision in forgiving William, share this story with someone who needs a reminder that true love can survive any secret when it's built on genuine foundations. And subscribe for more stories that touch your soul, because every week I bring you stories that will make you believe in the transformative power of authentic love. If you made it to the end of this inspiring story, leave the word library in the comments so I know you stayed until Claire and William's ending.